You watch Game of Thrones and think you'd be the hero holding the sword. Trust me, you would be the peasant dying of dysentery in the opening scene.
Look at you. You complain when your Uber Eats is 5 minutes late. You get anxiety if your phone battery drops below 20%. You are the softest, most pampered version of the human species that has ever walked the earth. Your ancestors survived ice ages, fought saber-toothed tigers, and endured plagues that wiped out half the planet. They ate tree bark to survive winters and drank water that would kill a modern horse. And you? You get a headache if you don't have your morning vanilla latte. We have this romantic idea of the past, knights in shining armor, castles, banquets. But history wasn't a fairy tale. It was a grinder. It was a time when a paper cut could kill you, and the doctor's cure was often worse than the disease. Today, we are stripping away the Hollywood lies. Here are 30 reasons why you, yes, specifically you, would not last 24 hours in the Middle Ages. Let's see how fast you break, you absolute disappointment. Fact 1. The water supply, the liquid death. If you were dropped into a medieval city today, your first instinct would be to find water. That is your first mistake. In the Middle Ages, the river was the washing machine, the open sewer, the garbage dump, and the drinking fountain all at once. Modern humans have zero immunity to the microbial zoo living in medieval water. One sip of that fresh stream water would introduce your gut to cholera, typhoid, and dysentery. Your immune system, pampered by filtered fridge water, would collapse instantly. Dysentery isn't just a bad stomachache. It is a violent evacuation of your entire body's fluids. You would essentially die of dehydration while exploding from both ends. The locals drank weak beer because the fermentation process killed the germs. You, however, would likely try the water and be dead by sunset. Fact 2. The Black Death, the lymph node balloon. You think recent pandemics were bad? The bubonic plague killed up to 60% of Europe's population, and you have no natural immunity. The bacteria Yersinia pestis didn't just give you a cough, it caused your lymph nodes to swell into black, pus-filled bubbles the size of apples in your groin and armpits. These buboes would eventually burst, spraying infectious filth everywhere. There was no ICU, no ventilators, and no antibiotics. The cure was to strap a live chicken to the buboes or bathe in urine. If you walked into a medieval town during an outbreak, your modern immune system would be an open door. You wouldn't be the survivor hiding in the attic. You would be the corpse on the cart, being thrown into a mass grave before you even unpacked your bags. Fact 3. Medieval dentistry, the blacksmith's pliers. In the modern world, a toothache is an inconvenience. In the Middle Ages, it was a death sentence. There were no dentists. If you had a rotten tooth, you went to the local barber or blacksmith. There was no Novocaine. They would simply hold you down, jam a pair of dirty iron pliers into your mouth, and rip the tooth out, often taking a piece of your jawbone with it. The shock alone could kill you. If you survived the extraction, the open wound would almost certainly get infected. An abscess in the jaw would swell until it closed your throat or spread bacteria to your brain. You have probably never experienced true pain. A medieval tooth extraction would reset your definition of agony right before the sepsis killed you. Fact 4. The chamber pot toss, the sky toilet. Hygiene wasn't just poor, it was aggressive. There was no indoor plumbing. People relieved themselves in chamber pots, bowls kept under the bed. In the morning, the contents of these bowls were simply thrown out the window into the street below. This practice was so common, there was a warning cry, "Gardez-lou!" from the French, garde à l'eau. If you were walking down a narrow street, staring at your non-existent smartphone, you would be drenched in human waste. But it's not just about the smell. That waste coated the streets, the markets, and the shoes of everyone you met. You would be walking through a biohazard zone 24/7. One scrape on your knee after slipping on mud, which wasn't mud, and gangrene would set in. Fact 5. Ergotism, the demonic bread. Let's say you avoid the water and drink beer. You still need to eat. Bread was the staple of the diet. but often the rye used to make bread was infected with a fungus called ergot. This fungus contains alkaloids similar to LSD. Eating this moldy bread caused a condition called St. Anthony's fire. The symptoms were horrific: hallucinations, convulsions, and a burning sensation in the limbs. Eventually, the blood vessels in your fingers and toes would constrict so tightly that your limbs would turn black, die, and literally fall off. You could be sitting at dinner, tripping on medieval acid, watching your own toes detach. You wouldn't know it was the bread. You would think you were possessed by demons, and the local priest would try to exorcise you, which usually involved more torture. Fact 6. Childbirth, the widowmaker. For the women watching, if you were transported to the Middle Ages, avoid pregnancy at all costs. Childbirth was the leading cause of death for young women. There was no sanitation, no C-sections, and no understanding of anatomy. If the baby was in the wrong position, the midwife might try to turn it with unwashed hands or, in desperate cases, use hooks to remove the child in pieces to save the mother. Even if the birth went well, puerperal fever, a uterine infection caused by dirty hands, killed thousands of women days after delivery. Being a mother in the Middle Ages was statistically more dangerous than being a soldier in a war. Your modern expectations of a sterile hospital room would be replaced by a pile of dirty straw and a prayer. Fact 7. Trial by ordeal, the divine court. Forget innocent until proven guilty. If you were accused of a crime, say being a witch because you know math, or stealing a pig, you might face a trial by ordeal. The logic was that God would protect the innocent. One common method was the ordeal of hot iron. You had to carry a red-hot iron bar for 9 feet. Your hands would be bandaged. 3 days later, the bandages were removed. If the wound was healing cleanly, you were innocent. If it was infected, which it always was because bacteria exist, you were guilty and executed. Basically, the justice system relied on your ability to magically heal third-degree burns. With your soft, modern hands, you would fail immediately and be hanged before you could ask for a lawyer. Fact 8. The common cold, the lung rot. You probably catch a cold once a year, take some Dayquil, and complain about it on Facebook. In the past, a common cold or flu could easily progress to pneumonia. Without antibiotics, pneumonia is a coin toss with death. Your lungs fill with fluid, you burn with fever, and you slowly suffocate. Modern humans have weakened lungs from pollution and a reliance on medicine. We don't have the robust, scar tissue-filled lungs of a medieval peasant who breathed wood smoke from birth. A simple viral infection that you currently ignore would spiral into a fatal bacterial superinfection. You would be the person who died because someone sneezed on you at the tavern. Fact 9. Lack of corrective lenses, the blurry death. How many of you are wearing glasses or contacts right now, or have had LASIK? If you have poor vision, you are biologically useless in the Middle Ages. Glasses were invented late in the 13th century, but were rare and expensive. If you are nearsighted, you can't hunt, you can't spot bandits, and you can't work in the fields without cutting your own hand. You would be a burden to your village. In a brutal survival economy, burdens are not fed. You would likely be relegated to begging or killed by a predator you literally didn't see coming. You are an apex predator only because of technology. Take that away, and you are just a blind snack for a wolf. Fact 10. Surgery without anesthesia, the awake nightmare. If you broke a leg or needed an arrow removed, you were in for the worst experience of your life. Anesthesia did not exist. You might get a rag to bite on or a swig of wine, but that's it. Surgeons, who were often barbers, prized speed over safety. To amputate a shattered leg, they would use a saw to cut through the bone while you were fully conscious, screaming, held down by 4 strong men. Then, to stop the bleeding, they would cauterize the stump with boiling oil or a hot iron. The pain was so intense that many patients died from shock. Their heart simply stopped beating. If the pain didn't kill you, the inevitable infection would finish the job a week later.
I see you checking your body for buboes. Don't worry, you probably just have an ingrown hair. It's hilarious. You people panic when the Wi-Fi goes down for 10 minutes. You call it a disaster. A disaster is when the village doctor decides the best way to cure your headache is to drill a hole in your skull to let the demons out. You wouldn't last 5 minutes. You'd try to file a complaint with HR because the dungeon is too damp. But we aren't done. The diseases were the easy part. Now let's talk about the people.
Fact 11. Bloodletting, the vampire cure. If you got sick, the standard medical theory was that your humors were out of balance. Specifically, you had too much blood. The solution? Bloodletting. Doctors would slice open your veins or cover your body in leeches to drain pints of blood from your system. Got a fever? Drain the blood. Got a headache? Drain the blood. Fainted from blood loss? Drain more blood to balance the humors. George Washington famously died after doctors drained nearly 40% of his blood to cure a throat infection. As a modern human with likely anemia or vitamin deficiencies, this cure would send you into hypovolemic shock. You would go to the doctor for a flu and die because he slit your wrists in the name of science. Fact 12. Mercury medicine, the heavy metal snack. Syphilis began ravaging Europe in the late 15th century. It was a horrific disease that caused flesh to rot and noses to fall off. The leading cure? Mercury. One night with Venus, a lifetime with Mercury. Doctors would rub mercury into open sores or make patients inhale mercury vapor. Mercury is a heavy metal neurotoxin. It causes teeth to fall out, uncontrollable drooling, insanity, and kidney failure. Patients often died from the poisoning long before the disease killed them. If you had any skin condition, you might be given a mercury ointment. You would slowly go insane, shaking and spitting out your teeth, while the doctor congratulated himself on a job well done. Fact 13. The food supply, rotten and dangerous. There were no refrigerators. Meat was preserved by salting, smoking, or just hoping for the best. Often, you would be eating meat that was partially rancid, disguised with heavy spices to hide the taste of rot. Vegetables were seasonal. In winter, you ate nothing but dried peas and cabbage. Scurvy, vitamin C deficiency, was common, causing your gums to bleed and old wounds to reopen. Worse, flour was often cut with cheaper materials like chalk or sawdust to save money. You complain about GMOs? In the Middle Ages, you would be happy to eat a rat if it was cooked well enough. Your digestive system, accustomed to processed, sterile food, would revolt against the bacteria-laden, rock-hard diet of the past. Fact 14. Parasites, the inner zoo. You are never alone in the Middle Ages. Almost everyone had worms. Roundworms, tapeworms, pinworms. They were all living in your intestines, stealing your nutrients. Some tapeworms could grow up to 30 feet long inside your gut. They laid eggs that you would pass and then re-ingest due to poor hygiene. Lice were standard. Even kings had them. Fleas were constant companions. These weren't just itchy. They carried typhus and plague. You would be perpetually malnourished, tired, and scratching. The feeling of things crawling on your skin and moving inside your stomach would be your new normal. Mental breakdown from the infestation alone would likely take you out. Fact 15. The sweating sickness, the mystery killer. This was a mysterious epidemic that struck England multiple times. It was terrifyingly fast. You could be dancing at a wedding at noon and dead by dinner. It started with a sense of dread and cold shivers, followed by massive, profuse sweating, headache, and delirium. Then came the sleep, from which you never woke up. It killed young, healthy, wealthy people disproportionately. Henry VIII was terrified of it and fled London every time it appeared. Modern science still isn't 100% sure what it was. Maybe a hantavirus from rodents? Whatever it was, your modern immune system has never seen it. You would drop dead in hours, sweating out your life force while doctors stared at you in confusion. Fact 16. Viking and bandit raids, the human predators. There was no 911. There were no police patrols. If you lived near the coast or a trade road, you were prey. Vikings, bandits, or unpaid mercenary armies roamed the land. They didn't just steal, they burned villages for fun and enslaved the survivors. You flinch when your toaster pops. A medieval raider has been killing since he was 12. While you try to reason with them or offer them your credit card, they would simply run you through with a sword. Violence was personal, brutal, and intimate. You are not mentally prepared for the level of savagery required to survive a raid. You would freeze, and then you would die. Fact 17. Accidental fire, the tinderbox. Medieval cities were built of wood, straw, and pitch, packed tightly together. Lighting was done by candles and open fires. It was a tinderbox waiting for a spark. London burned down multiple times. If a fire started, there were no fire trucks. The fire department was you and a bucket. Often, the only way to stop a fire was to demolish the houses in its path to create a fire break. If you were asleep in an upper room when a fire started, you were dead. The narrow streets acted like chimneys, sucking oxygen and creating firestorms. Given your lack of situational awareness and reliance on smoke detectors, you would likely sleep right through the first crucial minutes of the inferno. Fact 18. Witch hunts, the intelligence trap. Are you educated? Can you read? Do you understand basic astronomy or math? Keep your mouth shut. In times of panic, bad harvest, plague, people looked for scapegoats. Anyone who stood out could be accused of witchcraft. If you tried to explain germ theory, invisible bugs make us sick, you would be burned at the stake for spreading demonic lies. If you are a woman who is independent or opinionated, you are a target. If you are a man who rejects the church's teachings, you are a heretic. Your modern arrogance and need to correct people would be your death sentence. The smartest thing to do was play dumb, but let's be honest, you wouldn't be able to resist showing off. Fact 19. No insulation or heating, the deep freeze. Castles were not cozy. They were giant stone refrigerators. Peasant huts were drafty shacks. In winter, temperatures inside your home could drop below freezing. People slept in communal piles, often with their farm animals, pigs and cows, inside the house just to generate body heat. Hypothermia was a constant killer. If you got wet in the winter, you died. You are used to central heating and Gore-Tex jackets. You don't know how to layer wool, how to keep a fire going all night, or how to insulate walls with mud. You would likely freeze to death in your sleep during your first January, clutching a blanket that is damp and crawling with lice. Fact 20. Lead poisoning, the sweet toxin. The Romans loved lead, and the habit stuck around. Lead was used in pottery glazes, pewter cups, and even as a sweetener, lead acetate, for wine. Women used Venetian ceruse, a cosmetic made of white lead, to whiten their faces. It slowly absorbed into the skin, causing hair loss, skin rot, and organ failure. You would literally be poisoning yourself with every sip of wine and every touch of makeup. Lead poisoning causes aggression, stupidity, and madness. If you wonder why medieval rulers were often crazy and violent, look at their wine goblets. You, assuming the tableware is FDA approved, would happily ingest lethal doses of heavy metals until your brain shut down.
Still here? Impressive. Most of your generation would have quit by now to go watch a TikTok dance. It's funny to think about you trying to survive. Imagine you explaining to a medieval executioner that you have rights, or trying to find a gluten-free option at a famine banquet. You are soft. You are like a peeled grape in a world made of razor blades. But the end is near. Let's finish this. Let's see the final nails in your coffin.
Fact 21. Rabies, the hydrophobia. Rabies was 100% fatal and a terrible way to die. Wolves and stray dogs were common. One bite, one scratch, and the clock started ticking. Weeks later, you would develop a fever, then confusion, and finally, a terrifying fear of water, hydrophobia. You would be unable to swallow, convulsing at the sight of a cup of water, foaming at the mouth. You would descend into madness and aggression before dying of paralysis. There was no vaccine. The cure was to burn the bite wound with a hot iron immediately, but even that rarely worked. If a friendly-looking dog approached you in a village, your instinct to pet it, "Who's a good boy?" would be the last mistake you ever made. Fact 22. Leprosy, the living death. Leprosy, Hansen's disease, was the ultimate social stigma. It causes nerve damage, skin lesions, and the reabsorption of fingers and toes. If you were diagnosed, you were declared legally dead. A priest would read your funeral rites while you were still standing there. You were forced to wear a bell to warn people of your approach and banished to a leper colony to rot. You lost your property, your family, and your humanity. Given the lack of hygiene, skin conditions were common and misdiagnosis was rampant. You might have simple eczema or psoriasis, but a panicked medieval doctor could declare it leprosy, ringing the bell on your life forever. Fact 23. Animal attacks, the pig problem. We think of farm animals as harmless food sources. In the Middle Ages, pigs were semi-wild scavengers that roamed the streets eating garbage. They were huge, aggressive, and hungry. There are numerous court records of pigs wandering into houses and eating infants in their cradles. Yes, pigs were actually put on trial and executed for murder. Wolves were also a real threat, entering villages in hard winters. Even a simple horse kick was a common cause of death. You, who treat animals like Disney characters, would walk right up to a 300-pound medieval sow and get mauled to death because you underestimated the bacon. Fact 24. Battle injuries, the slow agony. Let's assume you get drafted to fight. You survive the battle, but you took an arrow to the stomach. In movies, the hero says a few last words and dies. In reality, a gut wound takes days to kill you. The contents of your perforated bowel leak into your abdominal cavity, causing peritonitis. Your belly swells tight as a drum, you vomit feces, and you scream in agony for 72 hours until sepsis takes you. Or maybe you just got a dirty cut on your finger from a rusty sword. Tetanus, lockjaw, sets in. Your muscles spasm so hard your spine breaks. Death in the Middle Ages was rarely instant. It was a slow, humiliating performance. Fact 25. The Inquisition, the thought police. If you lived in certain parts of Europe, the Spanish Inquisition was a real threat. They hunted heretics, Jews, and Muslims who converted but were suspected of faking it. Their methods of interrogation were legendary. The strappado, dislocating arms, the rack, stretching the body, or waterboarding. You, a modern human, are used to freedom of speech and religion. You would likely say something sarcastic or atheistic at the tavern. That comment would be reported. You would wake up in a dungeon, being asked to confess to crimes you didn't commit, while instruments of torture were laid out before you. You would confess to anything within minutes. Fact 26. Lack of hygiene during menstruation, the toxic shock. For women, dealing with menstruation was a nightmare. There were no sanitary pads or tampons. Women used rags, moss, or nothing at all. The risk of infection was incredibly high. Toxic shock syndrome wasn't a known diagnosis, but it certainly killed many. The cultural taboos meant women were often considered unclean and excluded from certain activities or even religious services during their cycle. The combination of poor nutrition, heavy labor, and constant infection risk made reproductive health a game of Russian roulette. Fact 27. Bedbugs and lice, the sleep eaters. Sleep tight, don't let the bedbugs bite isn't a cute rhyme. It was a desperate prayer. Beds were made of straw frames held together by ropes. They were infested with bedbugs. Every night, you would be eaten alive. The bites would itch. You would scratch with dirty fingernails, and the bites would get infected. Lice were so common that people carried special scratching sticks to reach under their wigs or heavy wool clothes. Typhus, carried by lice, decimated armies and cities. You would never, ever feel clean. The psychological torture of constant itching alone would drive a modern person to the brink of insanity. Fact 28. The king's whim, arbitrary execution. You are used to the rule of law. In the past, the king or the local lord was the law. If a noble rode past and you didn't bow fast enough, whipping. If the lord wanted your land, he took it. If the king was in a bad mood and didn't like your face, execution. There was no appeal court. You were a serf, essentially property. Your rights were non-existent. Your modern attitude of, "I know my rights," would be seen as rebellion. You would be crushed by the social hierarchy like an ant under a boot, completely baffled that no one cares about your feelings. Fact 29. Weather exposure, the heat and the cold. We live in climate-controlled boxes. We panic if the AC breaks. In the Middle Ages, you worked the fields in the blistering sun until you collapsed from heat stroke. In winter, you worked in the freezing mud until you got frostbite. There was no sunscreen, no Gatorade, no thermal underwear. Skin cancer was common on faces and hands. Chilblains, painful inflammation of blood vessels, plagued everyone in winter. You simply do not have the physical toughness to endure 12 hours of manual labor in extreme weather conditions. You would die of exposure or exhaustion within the first week of harvest season. Fact 30. Old age, you are already dead. Finally, the biggest reason you wouldn't survive. Statistically, you are already dead. Life expectancy was low. If you made it out of childhood, you might live to 50, but you would be considered an elder. If you are over 40 watching this, in the Middle Ages, your teeth would be gone, your joints destroyed by arthritis, your eyes failing, and your body worn out by labor. You would be the old village elder, telling stories by the fire, waiting for the next winter to take you. The concept of retirement did not exist. You worked until you couldn't, and then you died. Welcome to the good old days.
And there you have it. 30 ways the past would chew you up and spit you out. You sit there in your ergonomic chair drinking filtered water, terrified of gluten and bad vibes. You have no idea how lucky you are. You are the pampered pets of history. So, next time you complain about your slow internet, remember, your great-great-grandfather had to eat his own shoes to survive the winter. Now, go to sleep. And check under the bed. I might have left a chamber pot for you.